Welcome to MMAfighting.com's preview of UFC 164. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And joining us this time on the preview show is one of the true veteran voices in mixed martial arts, a man who's been covering this sport for a very long time, since I was in my diapers, I think.
You were, I think.
Yahoo Sports' own Kevin Iole. What an honor this is for us. Thank you.
It's an honor for me to be with the man of the hour in MMA.
We appreciate it very much, Kevin. This is a very interesting card, a lot to talk to you about. We're coming off a show in Indianapolis on Wednesday and a big pay-per-view on Saturday here in Milwaukee. Does having a show so close to the pay-per-view, Wednesday, Saturday, does that help or hurt the pay-per-view in your opinion?
When they first came out, I thought 100% it was going to help because it's basically a 2-3 hour commercial for the pay-per-view on Saturday night. I wonder now, though, if it's helping or hurting. I don't have any data to really prove whether it's helping or hurting. It's one of those things, Ariel, I think that some people say, I got my MMA fix in and I don't need to watch. There's other people like us as big fight fans, and I think you say, hey, I'm going to watch every single fight. So I think it's a mixed verdict, but I'm not as positive that it helps as much as I thought originally.
And this is a very interesting stretch for the UFC. A lot of shows. I mean, from Wednesday to Wednesday here, 3 events in 7 days. What's your take on that? Some fans, some journalists say, it's great. The more the merrier. Others say, watch out, could be too much.
Well, I think people who are saying, watch out, it could be too much, don't have any data to do that, and they're just looking at it from their own particular perspective. And I think this is a worldwide sport, and on a worldwide sport, you take it around the world. You know, it's not going to be possible for you and I and Dana White and all the people who go in this traveling circus to be at every one of those shows. And I think that that's what some people think, that the same people are going to be at every show. We're going to be at most of those shows, but we're not going to be at all those shows. And I think that's the thing. It's a worldwide sport, and you have to treat it that way.
This is such a fascinating fight on Saturday night between Benson Henderson and Anthony Pettis. What about it interests you most?
Well, I think the thing, Ariel, that interests me most about the fight is the first fight. You know, you saw the first fight. I was there, K-Shide. It was the last fight in the WEC, which was a great organization that put on great fights. And that was, for 25 minutes, one of the best fights I ever saw. There were kicks, and there were takedowns, and there were punches, and all sorts of things, forgetting the Showtime kick. And then when you add the Showtime kick in a dead-even fight with a minute to go, a guy jumping up across the ring, off the cage, and kicking his opponent in the head, you know, that to me was just made it one of the best fights I ever saw. But Benson Henderson, if you watch that video closely, after he got kicked in the head, is getting up. Anthony Pettis' momentum carried him away from Henderson. If he had taken one more step, Henderson might have gotten up from that. So I think that, you know, there's so much heart in these two guys, and they're so athletic, and they have such good styles that mix together, that to me, this is a fight that I knew no matter where it happened in the world, I was going to be there to see these two guys fight.
It was obviously 3 years ago, but do you think if Anthony doesn't nail that kick, he doesn't win the fight?
Boy, yeah, that's a tough one. I think Anthony might have taken the fight anyways because he had a number of good moves in the 5th round, but certainly the Showtime kick sealed it for him.
So right now, you know, Benson keeps saying all the right things, right? He says, oh, it's just another fight. You know, he wants to break Anderson's record. He kind of looks down the line and doesn't want to put too much stock in the fact that he's fighting Anthony again, especially in his hometown.
Right.
Do you believe him?
You know, it's hard to believe that because, you know, this is the thorn in his side. How many times have we heard Anthony or Benson Henderson asked about the Showtime kick? He was asked about it at least 7 or 8 times in the press conference. He was asked about it on the conference call. Every single interview that he did, he was asked about that. So you know it's gnawing at him, and he is an unbelievably fierce competitor. So I think you know it's gnawing at him, and he wants to put that away and get it behind him and say, this man didn't beat me. There's nobody out there that beat me that I didn't get revenge against. And I think that that's what really is driving him in this fight.
Benson has reached that GSP territory where he's getting criticized for not finishing fights, squeaking out decisions, more so than GSP because his decisions are very close ones. Do you think it's fair? Is he fighting just tough guys and, you know, sometimes you can't finish them, or do you think he is not going for the finish?
If you read my column on Yahoo Sports about Benson, I addressed that, and I mentioned it's unfair. He's fought 7 fights in the UFC. He's 7-0. First of all, I think give the guy credit for being 7-0. How many fighters ever win 7 fights in a row in the UFC? And the answer is not a lot. But let's look at what he did. He thrashed Mark Bocek. He thrashed Jim Miller, who is a terrific fighter in my mind. He thrashed Clay Guida. Nate Diaz is another one. Those were exciting fights. I mean, yes, he didn't finish. So if your sole criteria, if a guy is exciting, is if he has to choke him out or he has to knock him out, then he's not an exciting fighter. But I look at it and I say, that Nate Diaz fight, I mean, he just dominated from minute 1 to minute 25 and never let up. So I think it's unfair. I think he's getting an unfair rap, and I think people are this is a sport. People forget what happened in the past. It's like, what are you doing right now? Give me the entertainment now. And this guy has delivered a lot of great fights. Even the Melendez fight, which you could argue went either way, was a very entertaining fight against a guy that was one of the top 2-3 lightweights in the world.
The Melendez fight was main event on Fox. The Diaz fight, main event on Fox. Now he returns to pay-per-view. Do you think being on Fox, 2 main event slots, helps him as a pay-per-view draw?
I do. How much is it going to help him is another question, but I think that the awareness of Benson Henderson, the awareness of Anthony Pettis is out there, and I think that will help him because all these fights that Benson's had, every single fight, the Showtime kick was part of his highlight package on national television. Millions of people saw that. I think it's going to make a big difference for him. Now, will it put the fight over a huge number? I'm not going to say that, but I think that it will be a better pay-per-view than it otherwise would have been because of the experience he got on Fox.
You know this from covering boxing. Traditionally, the lighter guys don't sell as well as the bigger guys. Does the UFC need an Anthony Pettis as champion? So flashy, so dynamic, to really propel that division?
I think it's always good, Ariel, when you have a flashy, dynamic guy that can do things that pull people out of their seats and they go, holy cow, I can't believe this. So that's always good to have that. But I think the UFC brand is what sells pay-per-views, not an individual fighter. There's maybe 2 or 3 guys that I would say sell. George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen, John Jones. Most of the rest of the guys out there, it's because of the card. And I think, Benson Henderson helps a little bit because he's been on Fox. Demetrius Johnson, we'll see that down the road because he's been on Fox. So those guys, it'll help a little bit that they were on. But I think the brand is the big thing. From the beginning, when Dana White, Lorenzo, and Frank Fertitta bought the UFC, they built that brand, and those 3 letters are worth millions and millions of dollars. And that's what people tune in for. They tune in to say, you know what, the UFC is fighting tonight, and I may never have heard of this guy that's in the fight, but I know if it's a UFC fight, it's going to be an entertaining fight, and that's what they want to see.
Who's your pick and why?
This is a really tough question. I was hoping when you asked me to do this that you wouldn't ask me that question, but I think I'm going to go with Anthony Pettis. And I just have the sense that Anthony Pettis has a little bit more to go. This morning I was thinking about it and I thought, Benson Henderson's wrestling, that's going to be but I just think Anthony's working with Ben Askren all the time. He has been waiting for this moment for over 3 years. He lost to Clay Guida. He lost this chance. I think this is what he's been waiting for. I think Anthony Pettis will find a way to get it done.
Now, the co-main event features 2 former UFC heavyweight champions going toe-to-toe in a fight a lot of fans have been asking for a very long time. You got Josh Barnett returning to the UFC against Frank Mir. And this is interesting because, as I mentioned, kind of one of those dream fights when they were both champions, when they both were in different organizations. People wanted to see this fight for a very long time. Is it one of those fights, though, in your opinion, that came a few years too late?
It's not coming too late, but I wish it had also come 10 years ago or 8 years ago. Josh didn't like my question at the press conference, and I asked him, what if this fight had happened in 02, 03, and 04? And, he kind of just, dissed it and said, oh, we would have had swords, fantasy swords, and he made light of the question. But, I think that when you go back, Frank wasn't ready for Josh right when Josh won the title, but as a year and a half later, that would have been an unbelievable fight because Frank was just doing some amazing things in the UFC. He was looking so good, and if Josh Barnett had been there with their ground game, I think that would have introduced a whole crew of fans that had never seen the ground game before or who thought it was boring just because they didn't know anything about it. And when they saw Barnett and Mir fight, they would have said, wow, this is amazing with the transitions and sweeps and everything that would have happened in that fight. So I think MMA is less for that fight not having happened back in 03 or 04. But I think it's great that it's happening now because I think it'll still be a very good fight.
Now, Frank is facing the first 3-fight losing streak of his career. Is this do or die for him in your opinion?
I think it is a do or die fight because I think if he loses this fight, Frank is a very smart guy with a lot of options in his career. And Frank is one of those guys that I think he could go out there and become a broadcaster. He could do a lot of different things and make a successful living. And for Frank to be on a 3-fight losing streak where he would move way down the pecking order in the UFC and not be fighting the kind of guys, I'm not sure that he would be willing to do that. He says, I'm only in it to fight for the championship. But by the same token, he's in it to fight in big fights and make big paydays. And if he doesn't get that opportunity, I'm not sure he's going to be interested in going in against guys who are looking to make a name against him. So I think it is a do or die. Even if the UFC wouldn't cut him on a 3-fight losing streak, which I don't think they would, but I think he might say, you know what, I'm 34, 35 years old, it's time to walk away, I'm not what I used to be. So I think it's a critical fight in Frank's career.
Who wins and how?
This is another great fight. So that when you have a hard time picking, I like Barnett in the fight. I just think his grappling is at another level. I think Frank's stand-up is good enough to give Josh some trouble with. But I didn't see against Daniel Cormier the Frank Mir, the explosive Frank Mir, the Frank Mir that seemed to be hungry, even though Frank said he was in great shape and had a great training camp. So I think Barnett, the fight will get to the ground at some point. It's inevitable, and I think Barnett will win the fight. Whether he's able to submit Mir or not or go to a decision, I'm not going to be willing to predict that because I could see a lot of scenarios, but I think Barnett will have enough control of the fight as it gets to the ground that I would pick Barnett to win.
All right, let's finish with some quick hits here. Will Chad Mendes make Clay Guida feel like maybe 145 isn't for him?
I'll tell you what, Chad Mendes is on a roll. After his fight with Jose Aldo, he's had 3 first-round knockouts. You got to give Dwayne Ludwig a lot of credit there. I like Mendes in that fight, and I think he's going to have an impressive win.
We talk about do or die. Brandon Vera returning to heavyweight. Does he need a win on Saturday?
I think both guys need a win on Saturday. Ben Rothwell as well as Brandon Vera. I think they both do, but certainly Brandon, he's been battered by injuries. He's had some losses coming off a loss a year ago, so people are wondering. So he really does need to win, I think.
And then who takes a step forward at 145, Eric Koch or Dustin Poirier?
That fight, I tweeted out. I said, that might be the fight on the card that I like the most other than the main event. I mean, that one really is there. I'm going to go with Eric Koch. I didn't like his performance against Lamas. Lamas really looked pretty good against him and kind of dominated him. But I believe in Eric Koch, and I think he's a talented fighter, and I think you're going to see him step up and win that fight.
Fantastic stuff. This was a lot of fun.
Appreciate it, Ariel. Thank you.
Not quite HBO Sports, all these other big shows that you appear on, but it was an honor for us.
There is no show in combat sports right now that I would want to be on with Ariel Helwani the most.
Thank you so much. If you're watching this, you know who he is. If not, check his stuff out, yahoosports.com. Check him out on Twitter, prolific tweeter, twitter.com/Kevin I. He is, of course, Kevin Ioli of Yahoo Sports, and we are just hours away now from one of the biggest shows of the year for the UFC. It's Benson Henderson versus Anthony Pettis 2. It's going down right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and MMAfighting.com will have our usual fight night coverage for you. For Kevin, I'm Ariel. We will see you on Saturday night.